When John was released from exile and resettled in the area of Ephesus, on his mind and in his heart was a concern for the people who he had left. We don't know for sure how long, but it was a period of time, enough time, that what had happened was that people were starting to listen to false spirits. In fact, in Revelation, when you see that the angel of God comes to John, and then Christ talks to John about the different churches, and one of the churches is Ephesus, and Christ was very positive as far as Ephesus was concerned, said that they are encouraging each other. They're fighting against false spirits. But one of the things that Christ said to John was that Ephesus had lost their first love. Now, their first love is somewhat mysterious as far as what exactly that might have been, but it would seem and appear to me it was a reluctance to love God to the fullest. Or perhaps a better way of saying it, an inability to love God to the fullest and an inability to love each other, our fellow men, to the fullest. Now, even as I talk about this topic, God is love, and we know, and God knows, and people know that we love Him by our actions to each other, that difficulty, that tension is there. And our text talks about that tension and how that tension is taken care of. Now remember, John just got back. What he was concerned about was that people had left and were listening to false spirits, and now John brought in a powerful way in this letter, a powerful way of bringing them back closer to God. In the book, in the first letter of John, over 50 times love or loved or beloved is used. And in this chapter, as we already have stated, in this chapter 4, over 20 times. So John is saying, you need to understand love. And then this dilemma that puts before us as sinful beings, as people who struggle with loving each other, how can we be followers of Christ? How can we do what is expected of us? And our text comes to us in a powerful, striking way, which clears the confusion. And we read the text. I read it to you. Whoever confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, God abides in him, as the children so wonderfully by Pam were presented, and he in God. So we have come to know and to believe the love that God has for us. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. It is the confession, it is the belief, it is the understanding that Jesus is our Lord that allows us then to love our fellow human being. And that is not perfect, as we well know, but in the perfection of God and his love for us, we love, and we continue to love. And we, perhaps the word is struggle, but also buoyed up by the acknowledgement and by the belief and by the Spirit of God that is in us. There's three things that I'd like for us to learn from the Scriptures that I'd like to be a conveyor of. God's love is eternal. Our love shows God's love. And something which I have put in different ways, but finally decided to say, and the spirits will show, the spirits that are there will show that God is love. And we are to test the Spirit. The Spirit is dual. There's two. There's a dark side, and there is a light side. And the light is truth, and the light is Jesus, and the light is from God. And the dark side is evil, and it's wrong, and it's hate, and moves us and shoves us and pushes us away from the ability to love our fellow human beings. When we look at the text, John says the litmus test. What does John say is the litmus test as far as the Spirit is concerned? The Spirit in verses 1 through 6, we have this answer. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, for many false prophets have gone out into the world. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus in the flesh is from God. And every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist. Wow. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you heard was coming and now is in the world already. Little children, you are from God and you have overcome them. For he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. They are from the world, therefore they speak from the world, and the world listens to them. We are from God. Whoever knows God listens to us. Whoever is not from God does not listen to us. By this we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. There's a funny story. It's in a book called When Life is a Zoo, God Still Loves You. When life is a zoo, God still loves you. And in the confusion of trying to sort this out, that we sit and we are in God's love and God is in us, and it allows us to live a life of confidence and hope, and allows us to live a life where we can love one another. Sometimes not as well as we want, and sometimes stumbling over our feet as we try, but always with the knowledge and the truth that the Spirit is in us, and therefore we know the difference between right and wrong, between darkness and light. And the story goes like this. It talks about, without God, how confusing life can be. It was on a very dark, dreary night, and the fog was extremely thick. And a young woman got off of work and got into her car, and because she had a dinner date, she decided that she would go home as she had planned. And she got on the interstate, and it became even worse. But because of the dinner date and the urgency to get back, she didn't pull over to the side, but rather when a car passed her, she saw those lights, and she could follow the lights in this darkness and this fog. And so she followed the lights, hoping indeed that this would help her as far as getting home. And lo and behold, she saw when the car exited off of the interstate, it did exit on her exit. And so she followed this car, hoping indeed that this would get her out of the fog and back to her home where she could feel safe and secure. And all of a sudden, the car stopped. And she stopped right behind it for a while as she sat there, and then she honked a horn. Then the car's lights turned off, and this big guy gets out of the car and comes back to her, and she reaches into her purse, and she gets her mace, and she locks the car, but then he knocks on the door, and she opens the window just this far, and he said, and she says to him, "Why did you stop in the middle of the highway?" And he says, "Pardon me, ma'am, but you're in my driveway." Got to tell that story. Apparently true. All right. So sometimes in our confusion, we follow the wrong impulses. We follow the wrong. Although it's not a bad idea, she got pretty close to home, so that part I guess is good. But you follow the wrong beliefs. We're influenced by things that can be very powerful in our life, and I don't think there's any age that is shielded from that, but certainly I think teenagers and young adults hit it even more. There was a man that I'm going to talk about a little bit more, but I'd like to introduce him right now at first because his name is Friedrich Nietzsche. And he lived at the time in about the middle of the 1800s. His father was a Lutheran pastor. In fact, he had Lutheran pastors on both sides of his mother and his father. His father was a Lutheran pastor, but his father died when he was 5. We're not told that is so important, but to me it's very important. At the age of 19, he was moving through university and through classes, and he was brilliant. But at that particular time, he rejected Christ and rejected God. And you might recognize some of the things that he wrote about. His philosophy was that instead of Christ coming into this world, instead of God creating this world, man created God. It's part of the whole movement. as far as modernism is concerned. It's part of Darwinism, and how did this world came about? It came about by accident. It's a fortunate one, but an accident. That's the wrong belief, okay? The wrong belief. And so Nietzsche became rather famous for, in his writing, coining the term, God is dead. God is dead. And so when we look at what is it about the spirits that we might test, what is it that will show us that God is love, as opposed to the argument that there is no God, and nihilist is what he is sometimes referred to. There is no purpose in life. Although he tried to find some purpose in the non-purpose, as difficult as that sounds. He died at the age of 45. Again, I do not want to overstate it as saying that this all caused this, but he died of mental illness. And in his writings, you can see that even though he believed that God is dead, there was a grief for that God. John comes to these people, these believers, these priesthood, these members of the priesthood of all believers, and he comes to them and he calls them children. And he talks to them. And he tells them, this is how you indeed do test the spirits. As we have already said, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirit to see whether they are from God. And then it ends, whoever listens, whoever knows God listens to us. Whoever is not from God does not listen to us. By this we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. So in summation, he says, test the spirits. A spirit that confesses Jesus as God is from God. The spirit that does not confess that Jesus is God is the Antichrist. And then says, love one another. Now the next part of chapter 4 presents a very logical, so if you're following along, it starts with number 7. It presents a very logical reason for loving each other. A very logical reason for loving each other. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. So as we are given this faith, as we are given this understanding of who God is and the love of God, as we become more involved as far as emotionally, spiritually, intellectually understanding that God is this great force that created this world and loves us and sent his Son for us, as we understand that, whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. In this, the love of God was made manifest or known among us, that God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. In this is love. Not that we have loved God, but that he loved us, and he sent his Son to be the propitiation or the offering or the taking care of the free ticket. Go, escape jail for our sins. Beloved, if God so loves us, we ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, and here's the kicker. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God abides in us, and God is seeing. Too good, almost too good to be true. Perhaps as a child you did use this. I don't know that I ever did. But you take that flower and you pluck the petal and you say, he loves me. She loves me. She loves me not. And you just hope that the petals come out right so that you end with, he or she loves me. You don't have to worry about the petals ending right with God. When we take that love and show that love in our treatment and our care of those around us, God is shown. Which brings me to the dilemma that I do feel, because I am inadequate of loving the way God would want me to love. And yet God says, because he died for me, he is in me, and I should never, ever give up on expressing that love. And I share that with you. So the three things that we're looking at, again, is God's love is eternal. Our love shows God's love, and we are to test the spirits. Test and understand that God will show us when we're on the right track, as well as because we know God, we will be shown when the wrong things come forward and direct us in the wrong way. In verse 13, it talks about the Spirit. By this we know that we abide in Him and He in us, because He has given us His Spirit. And we have seen and testify that the Father has sent His Son to be the Savior of the world. Now we have to look and see who is speaking this. This is John. John, who lived with Christ, who saw Him, who saw the miracles that He performed. John, who saw the kindness that was in Jesus' heart. He saw also the healing, and he saw the crucifixion, he saw the resurrection, and he saw Christ new and alive, different, but new and alive before He ascended. And then on the island of Patmos, John saw Christ again. And so now he says this to us, and we have seen and testify that the Father has sent His Son to be the Savior of the world. The question then, which we have talked about, but the verses now bring us back into focus on this question: how can I love as God loves me? How can I love as God loves me? Our text: whoever confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, God abides in him and He in God. So we have come to know and to believe the love that God has for us. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. What do we gain? Verse 17. By this is love perfected with us, so that we may have confidence for the day of judgment, because as He is, so also we are in this world. We also are we in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect fear casts out fear. Now I thought about this and wondered and ask you for your input. That doesn't have to be out loud, but ask you for your input on this. What do you think? There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. What kind of fear? Fear about the future, about what's going to happen at Word of Life. Fear about what's going to happen in your life. Fear about what are the changes that are going to come. Perhaps it's the fear of death itself. And here we have this word. There is no perfect love casts out fear. The perfect love of our God, and by Christ's sacrifice, our perfect love. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love, and we have been perfected. We love because He first loved us. If anyone says, I love God, this one always gets me. If anyone says, I love God and hates his brother, he's a liar. Amen. And we confess, and we carry on. And we make differences, and we change, and we hate at least less. If not, hate no more. For he who does not love his brother who he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. And this commandment we have from Him: whoever loves God must also love his brother. And the question is this: can this be true, this God business? Can this really be true about loving your neighbor? It's so hard to do. Maybe that by that itself is a testimony that something's hard to do. Quite often, if not always often, it's the right thing to do. Amen? It's the right thing to do. Well, Friedrich Nietzsche, this brilliant man who wrote and who was followed by philosophers, who was admired for bringing in the truth of life. And the truth was that we have no allegiance, that God did not create us, but rather we created God. And when you say that, then you indeed become God. But then you can start to understand why the secular world has so much to say against us. Because they don't hear us. They don't hear that Christ is in us. They don't see that because they don't want to see it. I guess our responsibility is that we need to be open and love and share. There's something about the spirit of darkness that is true and it's real. And I want to do something that, as I have done it several times, it has brought a certain darkness to my soul. If you're following along by reading, turn to or open to verse 7. What would a person that does not believe in God write instead of what John wrote? Now, this is not true, what I'm going to say. Well, I hope what I'm going to say has a truthful statement about it. But I'm going to change some words. Beloved, let us hate one another. For hate is from a non-God. And whoever hates has been born of this non-God and knows nothing. Anyone who does not hate does not know this non-God, because God is hate. In this, the hate of God, this non-God, was made known among us, and we can proclaim it. In this is hate. Not that we have hated God, but that He hated us. And there is nothing that He shared with us. Beloved, you other smart individuals, if this non-God hated us, then we ought to hate one another. No one has ever seen this no God or non-God. If we hate one another, they will see it, because this non-God abides in us, and His hate is perfected in us. Know the Spirit. Know the Spirit of God. Know indeed that what seems so intense and so convicting is absolute wrong. The nihilists say that there is nothing in life that is true. There is nothing in life that is true except nothing is true. The nihilists would define and would say that God does not believe in, that God did not create this world, and that this world has no purpose. And they fudge a little bit, because in order to live, they need to have rules, and they have to have some morality. And so that's when they move away from what they actually are saying. And I can't leave you with that kind of taste in your heart and your soul, but perhaps you have an idea, as I had an idea, of what it means to test the spirits. Test the spirits with me. Beloved, let's love one another, for love is from God. Whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. And this, the love of God, was made known among us, that God sent His only Son into the world so that we might live through Him. In this is love, not that we have loved God, but that He loved us. And that takes care of the dilemma that puts us under the cross, that puts us with Christ. He sent His Son to be the gift for our sins. Beloved, imagine John writing this. John in his 80s or his 90s, and he's dictating, or he's writing it in his own handwriting, and it's going to the people who want to hear from him, and it's going to us. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God abide in us, and His love is perfected in us. So for those who do not hear us because they are not of God, who have the wrong spirit, we certainly mourn for them. We certainly are open to talking with them. We certainly pray for them. We encourage them. We believe that indeed the Spirit can come into their lives and change their lives as it has changed us, but we are not intimidated. So the new year brings on the blessing of a new year in the love of God. So whatever happens as far as Word of Life, whatever happens as far as our own personal life, we know that forever God is with us. God never leaves us. We know that we have the ability to test the spirits, and we know that because of God's love, we love one another. And all God's people say, amen.